Let's talk about plot. In your story, you'll have characters, the reader's window to the story. You'll have setting, the canvas that your story is painted on. You'll have theme, the underlying reason that drives your story. And then you'll have plots. Plot are the events that move all the different pieces of your story around. It's the series of decisions that puts characters together, creates conflict, tension, and finally resolution. By the end of this video, you'll know all about what makes a good plot based on examples of other stories. You'll know and understand multiple frameworks for ways that you can develop your plot. And lastly, you'll leave this video with the tools needed to create your own story. I love this kind of conversation. This channel is called Writing Theory because I like breaking apart stories and figuring out what works. If you want more content like this, if you want to learn more about writing and stories, then subscribe and follow for more videos. So let's get started. Creating a plot starts with an idea. Now, where you get your ideas, totally up to you. It could be inspired by another story that you experience that you think could be done a different way. It can be inspired by something you encounter in your real life that would translate to an interesting story. Or if you're lucky, it's just something that can pop into your head in an unexpected moment of inspiration. It doesn't even have to be a plot that you start planning with. Some people will get inspired initially with an interesting setting or a cast of characters or a theme that you think really needs to be explored. Whatever piece you start with, a plot can't truly be developed and explored without all of the pieces of a story present in at least some form. You may not have the final vision of your characters, and your setting may not be fully established in your mind. But as you develop your plot, these other elements will also continue to develop. This process of planning out a story sort of happens concurrently. You might be focusing on establishing a plot, but the decision that you make in your plot will affect how you want to present your other elements, and vice versa. Every time you nudge an element closer to a final vision, it sort of brings the other components of your story with it because they're all so linked together. More videos on characters and setting and theme upcoming in this series, Writers Start Here. So with all of that being said, let's make an assumption that you at least have a rough idea of what your characters and theme and your settings are going to be for your story, so that we can now work on the plot. Creating a plot is a really interesting part of writing theory. Unlike the development of characters or setting, there are a lot of frameworks that are available to help you create a plot that fits in the understood structure of storytelling. Now, before you stop me and you say that you don't want to create an expected story, you want your plot to defy the standard, to break the status quo. Hold on. Before you break the mold, you should at least know why certain plots work, why certain kinds of stories are successful. Once you understand that, then you can decide when, why, and how to subvert your expectations. All of these frameworks that we're going to talk about are just tools to assist you on creating a plot that feels good. Let's start with the most basic kind of plot framework you can encounter. Now, this is something that you might have seen before in an old English or literature class. And for me, this was the first kind of plot analysis that I ever saw. It's called Freytag's pyramid. This is an incredibly simple chart for a plot, but it's one that breaks down a successful story into its most basic parts. As we move on to more detailed frameworks, all of these elements will still be represented. So let's take a second to understand this basic framework of a modern plot. When developing a plot, this chart, this Freytag's pyramid, it says that we should take a moment to establish the world in the exposition stage. This is the beginning of your novel, where the reader can understand how the world works, who the main characters are, where the story takes place, and maybe a bit of the theme. If your story and setting and characters are all really complex, then you might need to take more time here to allow the reader to adapt to what your story will be about. This exposition stage is done differently in different genres of books. A mystery noir book about a gritty detective in Chicago might not need much in terms of exposition. We know what Chicago's like. We know what a private investigator does. In a story like this, the exposition stage of the plot might revolve more around the characters of the story than explaining to the reader what life in Chicago is like. On the other hand, stories and genres like science fiction or fantasy, where they take place in a wildly different setting, may spend a longer amount of time establishing the world for the reader. Dune is an example of this. In a story like Dune, the reader really needs some time to understand the setting and the characters and the social structure and the themes and everything that comes with a story like Dune, so that as the plot develops, they aren't totally lost. And this can be a hard part of reading complex stories. Luckily, the exposition stage of the plot here doesn't have to be boring. You can still do great character work and even incorporate action and conflict into this part of the plot so that things stay engaging. Check out my video on the importance of pacing here. We talk about how to handle exposition in an exciting way. Now, after exposition, we move on to the inciting incident. Something happens that causes the story to shift. We're no longer able to just linger in the small town that our characters grew up in. Something happens that pushes us out into the world. The inciting incident is an important part of your story. It's the reason that the rest of the plot happens. It could be that the big bad guy is looming on the horizon and our characters are the only ones that can stop him. It could be that the world is about to end. No. It could be that our private detective in that noir story has someone walk in with a case to solve. The inciting incident forces a change. Rising action is a short name for the majority of your story. It's everything between Luke Skywalker leaving his sleepy desert planet and fighting Darth Vader. It's all of the wins and the losses that your characters experience as they try to resolve whatever problem that they're in. In this chart, the rising action is really glossed over. Our next few frameworks will give this part of the story the attention it deserves. And then we have the climax, the big event. Everything has been building up to this. The Death Star blows up. Woo. Indiana Jones survives the opening of the Ark of the Covenant. Marty McFly goes back to the future. Spoilers. Falling action and resolution then take over as everything settles down and the world and our characters are forever changed. Most plots can be sort of corralled into this format. It may not be clean, but it's doable. And while I think that this pyramid helps us understand the core components that make up a modern story, I think it's important to note that this graph is not very useful when it comes to helping you create your story. For that, we can look at a handful of different frameworks that have become popular over the years. One of the most popular frameworks with fiction is the hero's journey. In addition to providing lots of specific beats, the hero's journey provides a framework vague enough to allow a writer to adjust that framework to fit their story, but also specific enough to provide actual guidance, unlike Freytag's pyramid. You can find the hero's journey at a varying level of detail, ranging from rather simple to quite complex, and we'll be looking at this fantastic diagram made by Lisa A. Potts-Spindler. Thanks, Lisa. Similar to the exposition part of the pyramid, the hero's journey starts with allowing the reader to understand the world before the story really gets going. And just a note, these plot structures want you to start your story with exposition, but that doesn't mean it has to be just a dump of information. It just means you need to let the reader know what they're going to be experiencing, the characters, the themes, the world around them. It makes it a lot easier to enjoy the story later. In this framework, the beginnings of your story goes from a world that your characters know to one that is unknown. The hero has a call to adventure, meets a mentor, faces a trial, and then crosses the threshold into the unknown. All of this is that inciting incident that launches our characters into their journey. And from here we go through that rising action. The stakes are increased, challenges are faced, characters get stronger, and the villains show themselves. What I like about the hero's journey is that there are beats here that impact our hero. It's their journey, after all. After the entrance into the unknown world, our hero doesn't always succeed. In this framework, the hero specifically faces challenges and in trying to succeed, goes too far into the darkness. They're given a chance at redemption and they may not choose that redemption. And finally, at their lowest moment, when all seems lost, a sacrifice is made as the hero does choose that redemption and the climax of the story is reached. But at what cost? It may seem like the hero was completely lost, but they survived.
Close one.
And finally, we see the world following that climax. The hero returns to the known world and is given a new life to live. Or they've become so comfortable in what was previously the unknown world that we now consider it to be known. This is one of the most popular stories within Western media. You can see it in all kinds of stories, most famously in Star Wars. It's a plot framework that's proven in film, in television, and books alike. And this framework is one of my favorites. It allows a story surrounding a character or characters who will grow and succeed and fail and redeem themselves. And that sort of dynamic journey makes a character feel so much more real. A story about someone who only succeeds is not one that invests the reader. A hero needs to do all that they can and still not be enough. The sacrifice that they make pushes them beyond what they can handle.
No.
But it works, and the villain is conquered. The hero's journey is one that a writer should always have in their back pocket. It's in so many stories. Sometimes it even sneaks up on you while you're reading or watching something, and then bam, hero's journey. It happened to me with Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, and it happened with Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. But maybe this sort of story isn't the one that you want to tell. A hero's journey is one that really does focus on some kind of chosen one character, like a Luke Skywalker or a Harry Potter. But what if you want something that's a little less focused on a single character? The 8-point story arc, presented in Nigel Watt's book, Write a Novel and Get It Published, takes some of the focus off of the character and puts it more on the overall story. It starts similarly. The exposition being presented here is called stasis. It's where we meet characters and we see that their lives are average. Whatever they experience is just considered normal. Everything's peaceful, and then the trigger, the inciting incident. Something happens that changes their lives. The trigger launches the character on a quest, which makes up the bulk of the story. The character is pursuing some sort of need. Now, you might be thinking that with a term like quest, that this story is predominantly meant in something like fantasy, like Lord of the Rings when Frodo sets out with the Fellowship. But this is the exact sort of plot for other kinds of fiction, like Paper Towns by John Green or Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. The quest is whatever you want to make it be. It always leads, though, to a surprise, an event that makes the protagonist either affirm their role in their quest, I'm the only one that can do it, or question their role in the quest. Why me? Now that their faith in themselves is either confirmed or shaken, they're faced with another critical choice, a great obstacle that serves as the lowest of lows and forces your characters to make a decision. And finally, in the emotional turmoil that the surprise and the critical choice have caused, the climax of the story is presented. The ultimate test, the most dire event for our characters is addressed and resolved. Now we hit the reversal. We see the change in the world and the characters based on the results of the climax of the story. In some cases, especially in a first book of a series, this reversal can actually serve as making the situation worse, setting up even higher stakes in the next book. And then lastly, a resolution, a breath of fresh air. What all has changed? Now, there are a lot of similarities here compared to the hero's journey, but separated out in slightly different ways. If the hero's journey doesn't fit in with the kind of story that you have in mind, it may be because that it has such a large focus on a singular hero. The 8-point story arc here is a little less focused on one character's journey. And there are so many more frameworks out there. I encourage you to explore them on your own until you find something that really matches how you understand storytelling. We'll cover more here on this channel in the future, so like and subscribe to keep up with writing theory. Now, frameworks are a good guiding force for hitting all the right beats within your plot. And some frameworks, like Save the Cat, even provide page amounts for each beat. And this can help you make sure that the pacing of your story is really tight. Spend X percentage of your story on this beat, or target this beat for 1,500 words. And these frameworks help you take an idea and put it into some sort of structured scaffolding. But how do you come up with those ideas? Well, each person is going to be different. Personally, I'm always consuming information, science and mathematics and physics and history, and a lot of my inspiration comes from these things that I learn, especially from history. Other times you may be inspired by stories that you see. Maybe you thought that Lord of the Rings was fantastic, but you would have written it in a more modern setting. Maybe you played a video game and you fell in love with the journey of a character and you want to explore that in a book. Maybe you thought that anime was amazing, but it was canceled a decade ago.
Oh man.
If you're inspired by these things, you need to know this. Come here. This is not stealing. Being inspired by another story, no matter the medium, does not lessen your ideas. Ugh, it drives me crazy. I used to see it on the writing subreddit all the time. I had this idea for a story and I've been writing it for so long, and today I found a book that tells the same story. Somebody beat me to it. Look at me. Look at me. You will tell that story differently. You won't execute it the same. Maybe when reducing it down to its most basic parts, there are similarities, but you won't write those exact characters in that exact setting with the exact same themes. And readers who do want that kind of story are going to want your version too. This is a public service announcement. More stories is good for everyone. The plot of your story is one with many ups and downs, and it's a topic of endless conversation. There is so much to be said regarding the theory of creating a good plot. They can be convoluted and complex, like the plot of a fantasy epic like Malazan Book of the Fallen. They can be simple and beautiful, like Flowers for Algernon. They can be fun and cliche, like Aragon, or totally mind-bending, like House of Leaves. And I believe the plot is one of those core components of a story. It's one of the most fun parts of creating your story, and one that deserves attention. Do you have any other questions about plot? Post them down below. Let's talk about what makes a plot work or not work. And if you like this video, let me know by clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel. And as always, thank you for watching.